We all know what sin truly is. But to give sin its biblical definition, we remind you that sin is the transgression of the law, or sin is the violation of God's holy law. And the mouse is a great depiction of our sin in a number of ways. First of all, sin is like the mouse because of its nature. Because of its nature. You see, the mouse finds its classification not among the clean animals, but among the unclean animals here in Leviticus chapter 11. God says of them in verse 29, "These also shall be unclean unto you among the creeping things that creep on the earth." And then he lists a number, and in that list we find the mouse. According to these verses, contact with a dead mouse would have rendered a man, a woman, a boy or girl unclean until the evening of that day. And if a dead mouse falled into any object, that object itself would have been also deemed to be unclean. We didn't read that, but if you read from the verses 32 onwards, right down the chapter there, you'll find that that is the case. That if an animal fell into a piece of water or into a vessel, that vessel would have been then termed to be unclean. And so the nature of the mouse is that of an unclean animal. That is its nature. God has decreed it to be so. The mouse was an unclean animal. And folks, you've heard the gospel enough times to know that sin, as we are now picturing in the mouse, sin is also an unclean thing. Sin is that which defiles the heart and the soul and the mind of the sinner. God makes it very clear by direct statements in His Word that we are as an unclean thing because of our sin. God, through the prophet Isaiah, informs us of our uncleanness in that much known, well-known verse. In Isaiah 64, verse 6, "But we are all as an unclean thing. And all of our righteousnesses are as filthy rags, and we do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities like the wind have taken us away." Taken us away from God. That's what our sin does. Takes us away from God and His love, and His mercy, and His grace, and His offer of salvation in the gospel. Taking us away from heaven. That's what our sin does. Takes us away from our hope of heaven, the prospect of heaven, the joy of heaven. That's what sin does. It takes us away from righteousness and from holiness. It takes us away our sin.